As Mark Twain once said, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. He was talking about the western deserts of the U.S., where water is scarce and highly valued. Times may have changed, the population may have grown, but the need for this precious commodity has not changed. According to the Arizona State Climate Office, Tucson is fighting through its 21st consecutive year of a long-term drought. But what exactly does it mean to be in a drought? According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a drought is defined as a prolonged period of abnormally low rainfall, resulting in a shortage of water. However, the people of Tucson have been able to come up with some unique ways to combat water shortages.
In the 1970s, there was a very conservation-minded group of people in Tucson, and they really pushed water conservation. They created a program called Beat the Peak.
Tucson Water asked its customers to beat the peak each summer. Residents began using water more efficiently, allowing Tucson Water to keep critical groundwater wells shut during months of very high demand. Through Pete the Beak, its mascot and spokesduck, Beat the Peak created awareness of how important water efficiency was year-round.
The moral of the story, waste water and you'll pay. Don't water between 4 and 8, skip at least a day.
Tucson Water didn't only ask its customers to conserve, it also made sure the city of Tucson walked the walk of water conservation. Every city facility was checked to make sure that it was water efficient, and every city employee received training to make sure they knew how to be water wise.
For its size, Tucson had the most water efficient city in the country. And so we were really learning how to live here in the desert. But then finally it dawned upon us that ultimately all that really did was meant the developers would then take that in consideration and build that many more thousand houses because they had more water available. And so Beat the Peak it's no longer an official program. I can't remember exactly when it died, but it died on purpose because we realized that we'd outfoxed ourselves.
Although Beat the Peak was relevant until the early 1990s, the issue of water management has not been lost. But with the city growing and the formation of water management groups, water shortages have begun to be forgotten by those using city water.
Well, if you ask any of the students at the University of Arizona if there's a water shortage, they would say no, because they don't ever face it. There's always water to be bought in these nice little half-liter plastic bottles and things, which might be convenient, but that's not a very good way to manage our water.
I've never noticed any sort of water shortage or anything like that living on city water. Whenever I go home, water's always on. Water's clean, it's clear, it tastes good. I've never had any issues with it. Never question where it comes from, where it goes when it goes down the drain. I just know it's always there, and I expect it to be on when I go home.
An average single-family household consisting of 4 members will typically use, on average, 6,800 gallons of water per month. With the heavy usage of water by those within the city, people who live farther away are preparing themselves for a life without reliable sources of water.
It is a bit unnerving because you're never sure when the well is going to go out. So we've had numerous occasions when the pump has quit and you could be without water for maybe a few minutes to a few hours to a day if you have to wait for the well to replenish itself.
During the monsoon months, June 15th through September 30th, Tucson receives, on average, 11.3 inches of water. With the soils being so dry, the water typically pools and floods rather than pooling and saturating.
It floods so heavily, and that generally doesn't happen if the ground is already saturated. So since the ground is so dry, all the water just floods all over it. I think that's a pretty good sign that the ground is very dry, it's very hard. It hasn't been moisturized recently.
Without the saturation, aquifers and groundwater sources are not being recharged enough to make it so that water shortages don't happen.
We are thinking about buying a 5,000 gallon cistern and putting it underground, then having a water truck deliver water to that to fill it up, and that would then just give us 5,000 gallon buffer when our well quits producing enough for us.
Although the times have changed since Mark Twain has said his famous quote, the issue of water scarcity in the Southwest remains unchanged.